So we're here in the Maizetech stand, the sun is out, and John Foley is from Maizetech is going to talk us through when we know our maize is ready to harvest here. But he's also we'll just start, John. It's been a good growing season for maize, hasn't it?
It's been an excellent growing season for maize, Siobhan. We got off to a cold start in the month of April and May, but once we got to the middle of June, everything heated up. We had temperatures above average for most of June and July, and we had plenty of moisture to keep the crop growing as well. So I would say overall an excellent growing season.
And crops went in good conditions as well, so a good start.
Crops went in excellent conditions, yeah, which is very important for maize plants.
And there was a bit of maybe frost in June. We saw a bit of yellowing on plants, but it was nothing for people to worry about, was it, John?
We had a bit of yellowing in crops, mainly in the open crop, which was under a bit of pressure for a while. The crops on the plastic seemed to be doing quite well. They were well protected, and it was only at the time that they emerged through the film that there was a bit of yellowing. That's quite normal. We hadn't anything to worry about at the time.
Yeah. And the majority of plants, John, are under plastic in this country, aren't they?
About 85 to 90% is now on the film. So.
And what varieties have you what varieties are you growing without plastic?
Well, if we think about growing maize in the open in this country, we need to be using the very earliest maturing variety, mainly 7326, Pioneer, 7378, 7304. There's a number of them there that we have been promoting over the past couple of years.
And early maturing is the key, really, and for
early maturing.
Yeah. And mostly people who are growing maize as well will be looking for early or medium maturing, won't they?
Absolutely. The name of the game when it comes to producing maize is to produce a mature cob. 50% of the energy of the entire plant. 50% of the dry matter of the entire plant is in the cob. 80% of the energy is in the cob. So the cob is vitally important. Okay.
And we have a plant here, John. So if you can just explain what stage are we at. So the tassel is out. Explain maybe a bit about the starch and the sugars. What's going on at the minute?
Well, what's been happening here, I suppose, for 5 or 6 weeks at this stage, the plant has been transferring sugar into the cob to form starch.
Okay.
Now, this is the important part that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Sugar, as you know, is not a stable product in a silage pit.
Yeah.
If that plant was chopped too early, sugar will run out into the tank, so that's energy lost. But once the sugar is transferred into the cob and the starch is formed, it's a very stable product.
Okay.
Now, I suppose if you were to ask when would this plant be ready, the first thing I need to look at is the leaf, particularly the inner leaf around the cob.
Okay.
Once we have a green cast, it's not ready. It's still transferring sugar.
So this plant isn't ready, John?
This plant isn't ready. That green leaf tells me that there's still sugar left in that plant.
Okay, yeah.
So,
how far away do you think this plant is?
And I guess that's about 2 weeks away.
Okay.
Now, if we move over here to a more mature plant, you can see that this inner leaf has gone white. That means the sugar is down to maybe 1 or 2%. And at this stage, if that plant was put into pit, it's very stable. It's probably 30% dry matter, and that will stay where it's put.
So that's really.
That's.
Is this ready for harvest? This plant, John, or is it a few days away?
This plant is near enough ready for harvest.
Okay.
This crop those plants were taken from a crop near Gordon in County Kilkenny, and that will be harvested probably next week.
And do you know what variety that is? This one is it? Is it Justina or?
This variety is the 7326.
Okay.
It's a very early maturing variety.
So anyone who maybe has that variety should be looking at it in their fields, should they?
Next week.
Yeah, okay, next week. Yeah. And do you think there'll be harvesters out next week, John?
There will be harvesters out next week, yeah.
And is that early enough now for maize?
It's very, very early, you know. Yeah. But a lot of varieties that's grown under plastic would be somewhat later maturing than this 7326.
Yeah.
And of course,
so Justina is the one you went through at the start there,
is it? That was Justina.
Yeah.
But and even later still, we're talking about varieties like P8200 or 8201, and they would be probably a fortnight later on maturity, but higher yield potential.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why those varieties are grown on the film.
And
they will still get to maturity by the end of September, the first week of October.
You've done a lot of work, John, collecting different varieties. You have Carlow, Kilkenny, Wexford. So what area of the country is furthest ahead maybe than the others?
I would say Kilkenny, from what I see around at the moment.
Okay.
You know, well, the southeast in general, there isn't much of a difference because
Okay.
all the crops went in at much the same time.
Yeah.
And of course, once you put a seed on the film, it's
Yeah.
growing from that very day.
And you supply quite a lot of maize to the northeast, John. So what
We
are
do.
crops like up there?
I was in County Louth last week.
Yeah.
We're probably maybe 1 week later on
Okay.
maturity, which is
Yeah.
very little really when you think
Okay.
about it.
And have we any other varieties maybe that people should
We-
look at? So this one up here is quite green.
This is the 8,200. Again, you know, it was sown very early. It's over in near Gorey in County Wexford,
Okay.
and that crop is still almost ready to go. I'd say within the next
Okay.
10 days.
So it's going.
Give it 10 days.
So
and
what we're looking out for, it's going slightly. It's slightly white there in the inner leaf,
The inner leaf is starting to turn white.
but it's
so
still quite green on
it's
the
still
outside.
quite green.
So
Yeah,
what would
yeah.
you say that's
I would
at
say
now?
10 days to a fortnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good, so John. So you have a busy few weeks ahead anyway. You've plenty of maize on the home farm as well, have you?
20 maize in the home farm.
Yeah.
We're doing trials on film and
Okay.
varieties and herbicides.
And when will you start harvesting your
We'll
trials?
be-
They'll be ready next week, will they?
It'll be 2 weeks before we start harvesting trials.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. So thanks, John,
Okay,
for your
Siobhan.
advice, and that's it from the Maizetech stand now.